Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all. Baruch Hashem. L'chaim. There, we should show you this side. Can you read that? Saba, Sababa. There we go. All right. So we have been discussing this discourse, and to make a long story short, we start off talking about we're talking about the Beis Hamikdash, and we're really talking about the ultimate Beis Hamikdash, the third Beis Hamikdash. And to get to understanding the quality of the third Beis Hamikdash, the Rebbe says first we have to understand what is a Beis Hamikdash. Before we understand what a Beis Hamikdash is, first we need to understand the Har Habayis, the space, the place of the Beis Hamikdash, which we call the Har Habayis, the Temple Mount. Right? It's built on top of on the mountain, and this is a very special place. As we're saying, davening, Romamu Hashem Elokeinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kadsho, exalt the Lord our God, and we shall bow down, we shall prostrate ourselves to Har Kadsho, to his holy mountain. So there's something very special about this space. And the Rebbe started discussing the importance of this spot that, of course, Avram had encountered and Yitzchok had encountered. Now Yaakov describes this place. He says, how wondrous is this place? And basically, according to the Aramaic translation, it basically means that this is no ordinary place, meaning this is an extraordinary place. That was before there was even a Beis Hamikdash there. This spot, this space in the world is a very special space. And the Rebbe went on to explain that how is this such an extraordinary space? So he explained as follows. The entire world, by world, really we mean universe. The universe is a little bit bigger than the world, right? But the world is the only place where we do the observing of the entire universe. So in a sense, the world, this planet is bigger than any place else, because we are the ones that observe the world. Or in the words of Carl Sagan, what did he say? He says, this world is the means by which the universe understands and explores itself. A quote from Carl Sagan. He would probably be a little upset that his words are being used to help explain Judaism and God. Well, actually, now he wouldn't. In his lifetime, he was an atheist, but now I'm sure he's in a better place. So moving right along. So this entire universe was created through what we refer to in Judaism as we call them the 10 utterances. God uttered, God said, let there be light. God said, let there be this, let there be that. Those are 10 utterances, and those words are referred to as milin dehedyota. They are ordinary words, meaning they bring about something ordinary. What do we mean when we say something is ordinary? We mean that we don't see the divine in a revealed way, and thus it is ordinary. And that's why in the story of creation, the name of God that is employed is the name Elokim, Vayomer Elokim, and Elokim said. Now, was the name, of course, there's just one God, right? But there are different levels of manifestation, meaning the levels of God to which we are, shall we say, privy in our experience is going to change, is going to switch. So even though it's all from God, but it's from God, the way that godliness comes through a concealment. And so we see one thing, but the reality of it is something quite different. The reality is just the divine energy, but we don't see that. That is concealed from us. And that's part of the name Elokim, as Chassidus explains at great length. There's a verse. There's a verse that says, "Ki shemesh umagein havaya Elokim," that the name Hashem, the Yud Ke Vav Ke, and the name Elokim are like the sun, which is a revelation, and Magain, the sheath that protects us from the rays of the sun. So one is the revelation. The name Yud Ke Vav Ke is the revelation of God, but Elokim is the name of God that now protects us from the revelation. Now, why do we need to be protected from the revelation of Hashem? I mean, it sounds like a good thing, because it would shine us out of our own independent existence. And so we need the name of Elokim, which is, so to speak, the name of God that hides what's really happening. So I think of it in terms of, in terms of, an illusionist will work with something that's called misdirection, right? So what is misdirection? Misdirection means that you're looking at the wrong thing so that you don't see the right thing. You don't see where the magic, so-called magic is happening, right? So Hashem uses, so to speak, he uses misdirection. So we look and we say, wow, look at this world, look at these atoms, look at this universe, look at the sun. Wow, this is amazing. And we don't see, the misdirection doesn't allow us to see Hashem himself, right? That is 99.999% of the world, the universe. However, there's one little spot where Hashem did not shall we say, did not utilize this misdirection. Hashem had a direct revelation. Name Yud Ke Vav Ke, the four-letter name of Hashem, became revealed in this one spot. And that one spot was the Har Habayis, the Temple Mount. So that is a space that the space itself is revealed. And as we spoke about in prior weeks, that the one spot in the world where most Jewish people are going to be inspired and feel a connection to God is going to be the Har Habayis, the Temple Mount, right? We can actually, call it maybe empirically that the Jewish people, this is where the Jewish people feel the truth of who they are, right? Not everyone. We know Susan had an experience elsewhere. I forgot the name of the place. We can all have an experience elsewhere. I'm not against
about 3 years ago.
Right where you are, right? There's nothing stopping us. But nevertheless, we see that this is a very special place. The Rebbe then last week was a little intellectual, more of an intellectual piece in the discourse that went into discussing.
Rabbi, can you mute the background noise?
Yep. If you have something intelligent to say, you can unmute. All right, it doesn't have to be intelligent. I don't mind. So, last week we spoke about the whole way that one thing brings about another, and there are different ways that one thing brings about another. It can be in a more automatic way, like you can have sunlight coming from the sun. So you have light beams from the luminary, from the source, right? Then you can have the power, the energy that one puts into a stone, and they throw the stone, and the stone has that energy to lift it inside of it, but it's not something that's visible. You're not necessarily aware of it. Whereas when you see the sunlight, you know that there's a sun, right? And the Rebbe goes into the different forms of energies. I think we're going to kind of move to the next level. We're gonna skip. We're gonna skip the next section, which goes and continues in that vein, because it's a little intellectual and a little bit hard to follow, and we'll see what we can make out with the mimer. We'll move to section 6 of the mimer, which can be found. We left off here. The Rebbe then talks about why we have two analogies of the Rebbe uses cause and effect, intellect and emotion, and then he also uses the analogy of the sun, of rather not the sun, but rather of the rays of light coming from a luminary. Why we use both of them, but we're gonna go on to section 6 in the mimer, which is should be approximately, what page is this? Page 7. Okay. So the Rebbe continues on. As is well known, the world is structured according to the dimensions of time, of space and time, because its creation comes about through the medium of the name Elohim. Were creation to have come into being solely from Havaya, from the four-letter name of God, it would not have the limitation of space and time. So, you know, we realize that space and time, they're a construct, right? We're in a, you can only be in one place at one time. You can only be in one time at one time. And that time is really only the present. You can't be 5 minutes ago, you can't be 5 minutes later, right? These are the, shall we say, the way that space and time have been constructed for our human experience. It's pretty obvious, right? However, they are constructs. So people there are people who are able to rise above those limitations and be in different places at the same time. I've never tried that. But the point is, all of this construct and the fact that this construct is set in a set way is from the name Elohim. Now the name Havaya. So let's take a look at the name Havaya here. So let me do a let's see. Oh, I think I can share a whiteboard. I used to know how to do a whiteboard here. Let's see. Let's stop the share for a moment and go to a whiteboard. I just want to show you something that you may or may not know. I'm gonna do this in English so that you can so yeah in Hebrew means will be. Hoveh in Hebrew is in the present, and Haya was. So if you put ya, Hova, and Haya, and you put that all together, what you're going to end up with is the Yud Ke Vav Ke, the name of God that we do not pronounce, right? That's Hashem's name, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. The Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. That's basically uh that's basically the name Yud Ke Vav Ke. The four-letter name of God is the merging of future, present, and past, but all at one time. As I said before, we can't go to the past, we can't go to the future. We're stuck in this moment, right here, right now, right? This is it. This is all we have. So imagine you can go back and forth. Now imagine something beyond that, which is that the past, present, and future are all one entity, all one thing, right? We can't even imagine what that means. That's no, but in modern physics, they actually speak about that. Einstein answered the question. He says, why does time exist? He said, so that everything doesn't happen all at once. So, we of course take time for granted. But Hashem himself is totally beyond all of this. And so what he's saying over here is that creation happened through the name Elohim so that we would live according to these constructs. If everything was according to the name Havaya, the higher level of God, past, present, and future is one, then we would not have the limitations of space and time. And of course, the purpose, we wouldn't have the purpose, right, of what our existence is. This is why, with regard to the Beis Hamikdash, the verse states, in Hebrew, it's Achen Yesh Havaya b'makam hazeh. Truly, Havaya is found in this place. When we say Havaya, that is the way that in the discourses that we're going to be referring to God, the four-letter name of Hashem, the Yud Ke Vav Ke specifically, and we don't want to pronounce that. We're not allowed to pronounce that name, nor do we want to say Adoshem, which anyway doesn't bring across the four letters. So we switch around the letters and we call it Havaya. That's kind of the, shall we say, the code name for the four-letter name of Hashem, Havaya. So Yaakov said, truly, Havaya is found in this place, where in the Beis Hamikdash, space was not subject to its ordinary limitations, as reflected in a miracle that the space of the ark was not subject to measurement. You're familiar with this idea that the space of the Holy of Holies was not subject to measurement. I feel I need to show this on I'm sure there's got to be a website on this.
Why is that, Rabbi? Why was it subject to measurement?
Oh, I'm going to show you this amazing little teaching of this idea that the space of the ark was not min hamida. So I guess I want to just find a picture of the Holy of Holies. Here we go. I'm going to bring this up on the screen, and I'm going to show you exactly what this means. This is stated in the Talmud that the space of the Beit Hamikdash was Eina min Hamida, and this is what the Talmud means. So here we go. We're looking here on the picture on the left. Let's see if I can get that bigger. There we go. Perfect. So we have the measurements of the ark. The ark, you could measure the ark, right? You could I'm going to annotate here and show something which makes absolutely no sense. Okay, you ready for something which makes absolutely no sense? Stay tuned. Okay. So, if we're looking in the it looks like this is in the Beis Hamikdash. So in the Beis Hamikdash, from one wall to the other wall was 20 cubits, about 30 feet. Okay? It was about 30 feet from one wall to the other wall. Okay? Now, the ark itself, the width of the ark was 2.5 amot, 2.5 cubits. All right? And if you took your measuring stick, you could go and measure the ark. And the ark was 2.5 cubits. Okay, you have your cubits, you go and measure it. Okay. Now, you ready for the miraculous? We're now going to do the miraculous. I'm just going to try to find a okay, if you measured from the ark to the wall, it was 10 cubits. Then if you measured from the other side to the wall, it was 10 cubits. But if you measured from one wall to the other wall, it was 20 cubits. Are you getting the miraculous here? Right? So in other words, it was measurable, but it was beyond measure. So it was some type of miraculous type of thing that it took up space, but it didn't take up space. And this is what is stated in the Talmud, that Makam Ha'aron, the space of the ark, was minamida ve'ena minamida. So how could you have such craziness, crazy space going on? The Rebbe explains because it was from the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, where time and space are not, they're manipulable. They're just, it's just space is just a construct, and their measurement is just a construct. Is there a place where this was revealed, where it was just a construct? Yeah, in the place of the ark. So this is the meaning of the statement in the Talmud, that the space of the ark was not subject to measurement. Rather, the revelation that illuminated the Beis Hamikdash was the revelation of the divine name Havaya, as it shines through the name Elokim. For the divine name Havaya, as it exists independently, transcends space entirely. Within the Beis Hamikdash, by contrast, space was significant. Thus, the Holy of Holies was of a clearly delineated size, 20 cubits by 20 cubits by 20 cubits, and the ark also had a specific size, 2.5 cubits in length, 1.5 cubits in breadth. Nevertheless, the space of the ark was not subject to measurement. This represents the fusion of Havaya and Elokim, that within space there was a revelation of godly light that transcends space. All right, is that clear? Well, as clear as we can get it, right? As clear as we can get it. The point is that space how about this one? This idea, by the way, you might look at this and say, this doesn't make any sense. Well, they've found something similar to this in physics, in quantum physics. Anybody here familiar with quantum entanglement? I think I've discussed it before. Quantum entanglement is something that was discovered maybe a couple decades ago. This is the idea, for instance, if you split a very small particle like a photon, right? Then you separate it by, they tried this first in the lab, then they separated it hundreds of miles, and what they've figured out is that it doesn't make a difference how much space you separate this photon. You can send one to, to a distant galaxy. We don't have that capacity yet, but if you do something to one side of the one half of the photon, it's felt on the other half of the photon. And science is scratching its head trying to figure out, how does that happen instantaneously? that something that you do something to one side, you hit it with rays, the effects are felt not only on that half, but also on the other half, notwithstanding the distance. It's happening instantly. That's called quantum entanglement. Entanglement meaning that one half of the photon is entangled with the other half, and whatever you do, one half does the other, as if what? As if space doesn't occur, as if there's no space between them. So science is scratching its head, but comes along one of the quantum physicists, I think his name was Bohm, and he put forward the following solution. And he said, maybe the fact is that space is the illusion. We have this illusion of space, but maybe space is really just an illusion. You know what that means? Me neither. That's okay. But the point is, we see this even, a person can look at the Talmud and say, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, but you know what? This actually comes out in science as well, that possibly space itself is a construct, meaning it's an illusion. We have so many things like this in life, that they are certain constructs that are significant only because we give them significance, or because they're in a world according to a construct, but that doesn't mean that they are essentially significant. It's it's a mind-bending idea. There are many analogies for this, but I don't want to get lost into this. But the point is that time itself, space itself, they are illusions. They are misdirections. Important misdirections with a very important purpose for us to live our life, but essentially they are misdirections. And what if you had a space where this misdirection was minimized because the name Havaya was shining directly through the name Elohim? Well, then what you're going to find is that space is not so spacey anymore. You're going to find that space is not so much space. And you're going to find another miracle in the temple, by the way, that they would all stand up, and they were all standing like sardines in the Azara. Then when God's name was mentioned, the Yud Kei Vav Kei was actually articulated. You realize that the name Havaya, this name of God that I say was not, we don't articulate it. It's not true that we don't ever articulate it. It can be articulated in the Kohen Gadol, or for that matter, during the priestly blessing, they would mention the Yud Kei Vav Kei would actually be articulated Yud with God's name, which we don't pronounce it. And when everybody would hear that, you know what they would do? They would fall down flat on their face. They would prostrate themselves, and they would proclaim, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso La'olam Vod. Blessed is the name of the glory of his kingdom for all eternity. Just in great awe, of sheer awe of hearing God's name expressed. Because this was the place where God's name was actually expressed. It was revealed through the name Elohim. But here's the space problem again. Everybody was standing like sardines in that space, but yet when they prostrated themselves, there was space for everybody to prostrate simultaneously. Is that possible? Is that humanly, earthly possible? No, not according to our construct of space. We read this, if you do the Pirkei Avot in the afternoon of Shabbat, after Mincha. So last week we did chapter 5, and it listed the 10 miracles that happened in the Holy Temple. 10 miracles that happened in the Holy Temple. It's very funny because this one is like, this is a crazy miracle. If you talk about the splitting of the sea, okay, God brought a great wind and caused the wind to separate the waters. Okay, so there was almost some physical phenomena occurring to make this occur, even in the story that we read in the Torah, right? But it wasn't like spacing, it wasn't like bending space itself. Here in this miracle, space itself was bent. The space-time continuum was bent. Everybody was standing together like sardines, and then when it came time of God's name, everyone prostrated. What does that show? That space didn't take up so much space in the temple. And that was because we had this revelation of the name Havaya in this particular space. So this is all going to we're talking here about things that happened in the temple, but it's because the temple was on the Temple Mount, and the Temple Mount, Yaakov Avinu said, this is no ordinary place. This is a place where there's a revelation of the name Havaya. The four-letter name of God is revealed in this place.
Rabbi, how do we know that the Temple Mount is actually on the ground, that it's not in space? Because
Go ahead.
I'm a little confused, because you're saying the only place that it doesn't match up is is where the Temple Mount is.
Where was it? What doesn't match up?
You said you had your little diagram
Yeah.
that it didn't add up.
Right. The space took up no space.
Okay, and that's the only place on this earth that happens?
Ostensibly. I don't know of any other. I mean, we again, I brought another example in the temple where that happened. I don't know. I mean, it happened actually in the Mishkan when the Jews were traveling in the desert. I think the same phenomena occurred in the Mishkan. So it's a good point. It would have been happening elsewhere. But here the Rebbe is associating it with the space of the Temple Mount.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, okay. So the implication that the name Havaya is above the concept of space, however, requires explanation. Even creation from the name Havaya creates something new that is wholly incomparable to the source, which brings it into being. The revelation of Havaya within the framework of existence, the revelation of Havaya within the framework of existence, it brings into being merely results in nullification, that these created beings feel that their entire existence is solely that of the divine light which creates them constantly. Therefore, it would seem that even if the world was created by the name Havaya, should also be subject to the limitation of time and space. This is a question the Rebbe is asking. So whatever you're bringing about would be totally nullified, and they'd feel that the existence is solely that of the divine light, which creates them constantly. But therefore, it would seem that even the world, as created by the divine name Havaya, should also be subject to the limitations of time and space. I'm not sure I understand the question, but let's go further. The explanation is as follows. Since we say that Havaya includes the past, the present, and the future as one, right? You have to understand, we're not just talking about past, present, and future and being able to traverse them, but rather we're talking about past, present, and future as one entity. And time is a continuum, including the past, the present, and future. It is clear that the concept of time applies even as the world is created from the name Havaya. It is merely that in such a world, the past and present and the future are all as one. Okay, so I guess what we're saying here is that time exists within the name Havaya. It's just that time, the past, present, and future are as one. And similar concepts apply with regard to space. The concept of space applies even were the world to be created from the name Havaya. However, the 6 directions of space, right? The 4 directions and up and down, those are the 6 directions. That's what creates the 3-dimensional illusion that we experience. So they would be experienced as one, but they would still exist. Accordingly, we may say that the reason why there is neither limitation nor division within time or space in the world as created by the name Havaya, although even the world as created by the name Havaya is also incomparably lower than the source that created it, is because on this level, the world would be in a state of being totally nullified to its source. Since at this level, within the past, the present, and the future, and also the 6 directions, what is felt is not their own state of being, but rather that Havaya, which creates them, and so there is not going to be any, they do not conflict with each other and are indeed as one. This is getting all a little heady, and this is a little less heady than the previous section, but let's try to understand this. So you can have past, present, and future the way that we experience it, right? Once we're in this minute, a minute ago is gone, right? That's it. There's no getting it again. Then you could have the idea that past, present, and future exist, but they all know that they're all unified within Hashem. And so we can understand it with human beings a little bit easier, right? You could have human beings coming together for a meeting. When human beings come together for a meeting, sometimes one person thinks my opinion is the most important opinion. Have you ever been in such a meeting? It's pretty common, right? And then another person says, no, my opinion is the most important opinion. And then they can have a discussion, then they can come to a vote, then they decide according to the majority, right? But each person there has oppositional views, but through discussion, they can come a little closer, perhaps. And then through the system of how they're going to conduct the meeting, they can take a vote and come to a unified conclusion, even though they were not unified in their discussion. That's how normal human beings would have a meeting, right? Then you could have the awareness of extremely spiritual people who come together, who says that even though I have a different opinion, but really we're all totally united, and does not feel the contradiction of one person to the other. I feel that we're totally united. You could have a sense of your existence does not negate my existence. Your opinion does not negate my opinion. People can be existing. I mean, this is, again, maybe science fiction, but people existing on such a high level where even though they have different views, but they're aware of a higher view. We say this in the davening. We say, Osa Shalom Bimromav, that God makes peace in heaven. Well, you'd think in heaven that he needs to make peace. What's the conflict? What conflict is going on in heaven? But Chassidus explains that you have Michael, the archangel Michael, who is the officer of love and kindness, which was represented by water. And you have the archangel of Gabriel, who represents might, severity, withholding, holding back, right? And fire. And if you have water and fire coming together, how well are they going to coexist? Either the water will put out the fire, or the fire will cause the water to evaporate. And it says, we say, Osa Shalom Bimromav. He makes peace in the higher sphere, in his environs. Why? Because they are both aware of Hashem, who is above them. So when you're aware of something higher than you, your own entity is not going to negate the other entity. And so the Rebbe is saying over here, from the name Havaya, everyone would be aware of their source. And because they're aware of their source, they would not be negating each other, but only acting as one whole. Based on the above, it's necessary to clarify the following point. In several texts, it is explained that the mention of space within the Holy of Holies stems from the name Elokim, the lower name of Hashem, although this space as well was not subject to the limitations of space. In contrast to the explanation given above, that even from the name Havaya there would be the possibility of space. In other words, we were saying above that because there's an illumination of the name Havaya, that's why it was funny space, right? So others say, no, that if you have the name Havaya, you wouldn't have any space at all. There would be no construct of space. So the association with the name Elokim is made because the space of the Holy of Holies, which has to be 20 cubits by 20 cubits, is characterized by distinction and hence division. Each cubit was located in a different place. Such a division of space stems from the name Elokim. This then is what is meant by the statement that the space of the ark is not subject to measurement, reflects the fusion of Havaya and Elokim, the limitation and division of the space of the ark. That it was the specific measure derives from the name Elokim, while the fact that ultimately it was not subject to measurement came as a result of the light of Havaya within the space brought into being by the name Elokim, and this represents the fusion of Havaya Elokim. And this is what the Rebbe said above, that it's, since you have this space, is this very rare space in the universe, where you have this revelation of Havaya, what you mean is that you have the fusion of Havaya and Elokim. If you just had the name Havaya, there wouldn't be the construct of space at all. If you had just the name Elokim, well, you have space as we know it. But the fusion of Havaya and Elokim brings about this very unusual phenomena that it's measurable, but it's beyond measure, all at the same time. So let's go a little bit further as the Rebbe goes into this a little bit deeper, and let's see if we can understand this next paragraph. The reason that space and time, as brought into being from the name Elokim, are characterized by distinction. Now, you understand what we mean is characterized by distinction, right? Time is, of course, everything, every moment is broken up. Space, every foot, every cubit is broken up. And the name Elokim really has to do with the way that things are divided, the way that things are, that you have division, and every division has its, everything has its spot, has its place. And this is all a function of the name Elokim. It's explained Kabbalistically. We're not going to go into it now, but it's basically, it has to do with the way that things come forth in the way of division. There's the way of incorporation, and then there's the way of division, and both of them are necessary in the divine powers to bring about this existence. So the reason that space and time is brought into being from the name Elokim are characterized by distinction is because time and space as created from Elokim bring into being seemingly independent entities. When the 6 directions of space and the division of past, present, and future within the continuum of time feel that their entire existence is the godliness that creates them, then they are as one, as we said above. How then is it possible that within the space of the ark, a space that was characterized by distinction, which indicates that it appears as an independent entity, be revealed the divine name of Havaya that is not subject to measurement? In a sense, what we're asking is, how can you have both? Either you're totally nullified, in which case there is no measurement, or you're aware, or you're totally concealed and there is measurement. How can you have a merging of these two in the same place? This seems to be a total impossibility. And what the Rebbe is going to be bringing about, I believe, is that both Havaya and Elokim are names, but there's an aspect of God that comes from yet higher that are able to bring the two together. Let's see how this unfolds. The contraction and concealment brought about by the name Elokim affects merely the created beings. It causes no concealment at all for the name Havaya. Therefore, even after the creative power of the name Havaya is enclosed within the name Elokim, thus causing the world to feel itself as an independent entity, there's no concealment before Havaya. Thus, the revelation of the light of the name Havaya, which brings about the realization that the world exists because Havaya creates it, is to be found even within the framework of being that comes through the concealment brought about by the name Elokim, which involves space and time being considered as distinct entities. An analogy will help us here. You have a master and a disciple. Let's say you have a master who is, again, Einstein, right? And the disciple would be like a second grader, okay? The master is on a whole different level. When the master desires to teach the disciple, he must first conceal the essence of his conception and there remains just the external aspect of the idea. Moreover, even this external aspect must be limited and concealed in garments and explanations and analogies. The contraction and the concealment exist only for the disciple, but not for the master. The master discerns the essence of his conception of the idea even within the external aspect he communicates to the student, even within the garments and analogies in which he garbs it. Okay, so you have the idea of a master and a student, right? So the master has a very high idea and concept, but he has to bring it down into a way that the student will understand it. So in so doing, he has to bring explanations, he has to bring analogies. He's lowering his, so to speak, well, he is actually dumbing it down. As he dumbs it down, did the master become dumb? No, the master has the full conception just like before. The analogy of master and disciple is not entirely representative of the analog, the manner in which the infinite dimension of the name of I is expressed through the medium of Elokim. For the concept that the process of contracting and garbing does not conceal anything for the master implies that after the contraction of intellect, the inner conception of the idea shines forth to the master, even as it's vested within the external aspect he's communicating to the student. With regard to the idea of tzimtzum, however, tzimtzum is the process of God contracting and concealing. It does not produce genuine limitation. Basically, what the Rebbe is saying over here is that Tzimtzum is all creates a seeming contraction of godliness, but the fact is that Or Ein Sof is still there. There's the infinite light of God is everywhere. And even though there is a contraction going on, the contraction does not conceal God. So, whereas with the teacher and a student, the master and a student, the master is actually concealing something. God is actually concealing nothing. This goes back to my point earlier of the idea of an illusionist. An illusionist is practicing misdirection. So you look at the wrong thing, and you're not looking at the truth of the matter. Hashem, and this is creating this. The greatest illusion that Hashem creates is existence. Hashem is really everywhere. Hashem is really everything, but he creates this existence that allows us to think that we are independent entities. So even within existence is brought into being through the concealment of Elokim, the revelation of the light of the name Havaya shines through. For with regard to this dimension, the Tzimtzum represents concealment
Rabbi,
Yes.
I have to interrupt you. Are you saying that Hashem makes us think we have free will, but we really don't?
I don't know if I'm saying that. That might be. It might be that free will is our perception of having free will. That's a possibility. I'm open to that possibility. That's one point of view. One thing is for sure, we think we have free will.
What was the question?
The question, go ahead, Susan, you want to repeat your question?
That Hashem makes us think we have free will when we don't really have free will.
Or
like Rabbi Rice was saying about this
yeah, that could be.
Space and time, and
but I would
it's not real.
I would kind of put your point, I would slightly adjust it. I would say what free will means essentially is our perception that we have free will. It's not that we don't have it.
But from what you said, we don't even have a perception.
Oh, we have a perception. We have a perception of free will. A human being definitely has a perception of free will. You know, I know that I could.
As much as Hashem allows us, yes. I mean, you have to understand, if Hashem, God is everywhere, he's in my DNA.
Yes.
Okay, so basically, do you know what I'm saying, Rabbi?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's a very profound derivation of what we've been saying. If Hashem is everywhere and everything, right? Then that would kind of seem to mean that we don't really have the ability to make a choice. It's all just God flowing through God. And we're just, here for the ride or whatever. I mean, it's not quite like that, but I mean, like I said.
You didn't hear what I said. I said bingo.
Okay. Bingo, right? So I'm saying that that's a possibility, but I'm saying what free will is in that sense, in that regard, would be our perception that we have free will. And what that means, I don't know. It's a whole longer discussion. It's a very deep and profound discussion. David, please.
Yeah, the Torah tells us or implies that we do have free will, and Hashem would not speak to us. It says Hashem doesn't come as a trickster. He doesn't come in a tricky way. So if he's implying through Torah that we do have free will, then we do have free will. Doesn't preclude the fact that he may know what we're going to choose,
Right.
but we have total free will.
Well, here we are in the last minute with a discussion that shouldn't take any more than 30 seconds, right? Free will. So how does the Torah imply free will? By the fact that we have the idea of divine reward and punishment, right?
Well, besides that, I heard Rabbi Gordon they say that Hashem takes us to the crossroads. Whether we'll go left or right is up to our choice.
But I'm saying, where do you see in the Torah that we have free choice? How do you know, according to the Torah, that we have free choice?
Isn't that what's taught in Chassidus?
But I'm saying, where do you see it in the Torah? I know that we have it, but I'm saying, where do you see in the Torah what? So there's no question that
Well, Adam had the choice. Adam and Eve had a choice to eat or not to eat.
There you go. And then that they were punished because they didn't.
Right. So in other words, there was that possibility that they were going to do the right thing and not eat. But Hashem told them not to eat.
Right. And then they were punished. How can you be punished if you don't have free choice? That was my point, that reward and punishment is very good. That you point to the very first thing to happen with the human being is all about free choice, right? And how could you say that we don't have free choice? And I don't have answers for all of this, but it's a fascinating discussion. But there are, it's all a paradox wrapped up within an enigma, and we're just trying to unfold it to some degree here. So we will, God willing, dive in again. I'm going to try to put all of this into synopsize all of this to put it in short so we can have a clearer idea. We might skip through some of the heavier parts and get to where the Rebbe is pointing to. So we didn't even get to the description, by the way, of the Beis Hamikdash itself yet. This is all the Rebbe talking about the space of the Beis Hamikdash. Then we're going to talk about the Beis Hamikdash itself. But
Rabbi,
yeah.
I was going to say also, you were talking before about the angel Michael and the angel Gabriel. So I saw a thing in Baal Turim from Parshas Balak, which was Balak is this week or last week?
This week.
This week, yeah. So when it's talking about the whole thing with the donkey, who's trying to get him to go on the right way. So it says, "Hine anochi yatzas elasatan," that he went out. He went out, and it was an angel saying that he was an angel of mercy,
right?
And he went out, and he was
I came out to obstruct.
Right. So, so in other words, so the Medrash says that it was a merciful angel, which is Michael, and then Baal Turim says that the phrase "Hine Anochi Yitzasi Lasatan" is a gematria of 343, which is equal to Malach Hashem Baderech. Was an angel. Malach Hashem Baderech, an angel of Hashem on the road, is the equivalent to the phrase Gabriel HaMalach. So in other words, it started out as Michael. Either it started as Michael, and it became Gabriel, or it started out it was Gabriel, and Gabriel was just revealing a merciful side of himself. Which it goes on in the footnote to give a whole bunch of different examples where Gabriel acted to do different things that were merciful, even though he's the angel of the opposite.
Right. So I guess that goes to the point that he makes peace in the heavenly sphere, because these are, even though they are angels with particular qualities, but they'll act opposite of that quality because it's all interconnected.
It says that Gabriel cooled the coals that would have destroyed all of the Jews along with the Beis Hamikdash, and he held them and cooled them off
Hmm.
And so they only destroyed the base of Mikdash.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you all for joining. And
Thank you, Rabbi. Nice to see you.
good to see you all. See you next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.